Tonight on Y News, Vice President Leni Robredo claims that the government's war on drugs is a failure as she shared her report on her 18-day stint as co-chairman of the Interagency Committee on Anti-Illegal Drugs. President Rodrigo Duterte has signed into law the 4.1 trillion national budget for the year 2020. Mayor Isko Moreno orders a zero-vendor policy on Traslacion route. The Department of Health has ordered a strict monitoring of incoming travelers from China amid reports of an allegedly mysterious viral disease. Iran places an $80 million bounty on Donald Trump's head. And Prime Minister Scott Morrison warns bushfires in Australia might burn for months. Good evening. Vice President Leni Robredo finally released her report for her stint as co-chairperson of the Interagency Committee on Anti-Illegal Drugs. According to the Vice President, the drug war is considered as a failure. Vincent Arboleda clarifies why.
It is high time for the government to change its strategy in fighting illegal drugs in the country, according to Vice President Leni Robredo. The country's second top official shared her observations and recommendations through the data she had gathered as co-chairperson of the Interagency Committee on Anti-Illegal Drugs, or ICAD, for 18 days. Based on the data from the Philippine National Police, the estimated drug consumption in the country has a minimum of 3,000 kilograms a week for an estimate of 3 million drug users taking 1 gram a week. These figures show that authorities were able to seize only almost 1% of the total consumption of illegal drugs in 3 years.
1%. Isipin na lang natin kung exam ito, ang magiging score ng ating pamahalaan ay 1/100.
The Vice President also pointed out that among the 1.3 million surrenderers, only 32 to 50% have undergone screening and assessment, while only around 10 to 15% are undergoing rehabilitation. With these data, according to Vice President Robredo, the government's drug war can be considered a failure.
Failure na siya. Dahil yung kampanya laban sa illegal na droga, maraming aspeto ito. At nakikita natin, gaya ng sinabi ko sa report, na masyado lang natutukan yung street level enforcement.
For VP Robredo, the government should target drug lords and stop the supply of drugs in the Philippines. With these results and observations, the Vice President recommends that the chairmanship of the ICAD should be transferred to the Dangerous Drugs Board, or DDB.
Ang DDB ang mas may kakayahang magplano ng pangkalahatang mga programa kung saan tutulong ang bawat miyembro ng ICAD. Kung sila ang pinuno ng ICAD, magiging mas balanse ang kampanya at lahat ng aspeto ay matutugunan.
The Vice President also urges the President to certify as urgent the pending bills and resolutions that can strengthen the campaign against illegal drugs, as well as provide funds to be used by the agencies and local governments. VP Robredo also recommends abolishing o plantokhang, going after high-value targets like drug lords to curb the supply of drugs and strengthen community-based rehabilitation. Vice President Leni Robredo also thanked the President for giving her the chance to help in the country's campaign against illegal drugs. VP Robredo vows to continue her efforts by pushing for community-based rehabilitation together with the private sectors in the country. Vincent Arboleda, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Malacanang says there is nothing new in Vice President Leni Robredo's report on the government's anti-drug campaign. For the palace, the Vice President just wants to be relevant. Rosa Licos explains why.
Presidential spokesperson and Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo hits back at Vice President Leni Robredo after she released her reports on the administration's anti-drug war. The palace official says if the Vice President thinks the Duterte administration failed in its anti-drug war, he calls VP Robredo's co-chairmanship in the Interagency Committee on Anti-Illegal Drugs, or ICAD, a failure. VP Robredo served for only 18 days as ICAD co-chair before President Rodrigo Duterte fired her.
Palagay ko yung failure, yung pag-upo niya.
The palace official says the figures the Vice President released in relation to the anti-drug war are wrong. Secretary Panelo adds the anti-drug law enforcement agencies can verify this. Unlike VP Robredo, who has no basis for her figures, he says President Duterte, as the chief executive, has unlimited resources. The presidential spokesperson also stresses that what VP Robredo reports is nothing new.
I think she just wants to be relevant. It's a dud. Wala naman siyang sinabi doon na bago na hindi tinututukan ng mga ahensya na involved sa laban sa droga. There's nothing new in what she said.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, or PDEA, took exception to the claim of Vice President Robredo that the Duterte administration's war against illegal drugs was a failure. In a press statement, PDEA Chief Director General Aaron Aquino said Robredo had dismissed and ignored all reports of the government in curbing illegal drugs for the past 3 years. The PDEA chief was questioning how Robredo can claim that the drug war was a failure when, for him, numbers have shown otherwise. Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
Students whose schools are located in Manila City won't need to go to class on January 9th, the day of the Quiapo procession or Traslacion. Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso has ordered a ban of vendors in the entire route of the procession. Bernard Dadis reports why.
Thousands of devotees come barefoot for the annual procession in Quiapo, Manila. There's a high risk for them to get injured by sticks used for fish balls and other street foods. Broken bottles may also be found anywhere on the road. To avoid injuries caused by sticks, broken glass, and other objects that may cause accidents or injuries, Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso orders a zero vendor policy in the areas where the Traslacion 2020 will take place.
Walang vendor sa buong Quiapo. Zero. At lahat ng dadaanan ng Traslacion. Walang uri ng obstruction.
The city mayor also prohibits any kind of vehicles in the area such as motorcycles, trucks, and private vehicles. Even police mobile vehicles, fire trucks, and ambulances will not be allowed.
Kapag iniwan nyo sa sasakyan ninyo o motor ninyo, you will be considered as donors of the city of Manila. Kailangan ko po ang pakikiisa ninyo para naman sa kaligtasan to ng lahat.
A track ban will be implemented on the Traslacion route from January 7 to 9. Mayor Isko has also declared a suspension of all classes in the city on the day of the procession. Even the work of city government employees is suspended on the day except those involved in maintaining peace and order, like public services, traffic enforcement, disaster risk reduction and management, and sanitation. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
The National Capital Region Office will implement strict security measures for the safety of the attendees on Thursday's procession. A ban on liquor, bladed weapons, and even barbecue sticks will be enforced. Lea Ilagan tells us why.
The National Capital Region Police Office, or NCRPO, received no threats for Traslacion on Thursday. The PNP will deploy 16,000-strong security forces for January 9 from NCRPO, AFP National Capital Region, Bureau of Fire Protection, Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, and Philippine Coast Guard, despite no threats monitored. NCRPO Acting Director, Police Brigadier General De Bolsina says more than 2,000 Special Action Force or SAF personnel will be deployed around the Andas to prevent any obstruction to the route of the procession. Signal jamming will also be implemented on the day of the procession, according to SINAS. The NCRPO Acting Chief adds that the BJMP's mobile jail will be on standby in the area to arrest violators.
Yun lang naman ang preventive. Lalo na yung madidetect natin ng mga lasing o kaya amoy alak para hindi po sila makapag-disturbo sa prosesyon.
Bags that are not transparent are also prohibited. Pointed and bladed weapons, firearms, barbecue sticks, chemicals, and liquor are also banned. According to Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso, no obstruction policy will be strictly enforced around the city.
Any vehicles that being utilized by the respective agencies along the route has to be clear of everything, including motorcycles. All those vehicles found in the area will be considered donations to the city of Manila, because we will pick it up, we'll bring it in their rightful place, we will implement towing.
Even tarpaulins with greetings for the procession will be considered by the Manila City government as obstruction.
Walang mag-e-epa. Mas marami pang pagbati ninyo kaysa sa pagbati ng tao.
The Jones, QUEZON, and MacArthur bridges will not be passable for motorists on Thursday. The Department of Public Works and Highways, or DPWH, recommends to use the Ayala Bridge for security. But heads up, the DPWH will place barbed wires in that area. From Quirino Grandstand, the procession will pass through Independence Road, counterflow on Katikbak Road, will then head to Finance Road around the National Museum, counterflow on Ayala Boulevard, counterflow on Ayala Bridge to Carlos Palanca, and the pass through the old route to reach the Quiapo Church. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue, Quiapo, Manila.
The looming tension between the United States of America and Iran has partially affected the oil prices. Meanwhile, the Energy Department reports that oil companies have yet to implement fuel price hikes due to additional excise tax. Joanano tells us why.
The Department of Energy, or DOE, is strictly monitoring the oil price adjustments in the world market amid a looming tension between the United States of America and Iran. Although the Philippines does not import crude directly from Iran, the country gets its supply from the neighboring countries in the Middle East. The Energy Department explains there might be a delay in the delivery of crude to the country due to the US-Iran conflict that might have an impact on fuel prices.
Si Iran kasi napaka-strategic location niya, lalo na doon sa dadaanan ng ating mga vessel o ng mga barges, yung Strait of Hormuz. If you will notice in the past na once na nagkaroon ng threat, yun ang target nilang sarhan.
Based on the announcement of several oil companies, there will be a 40 centavo per liter price increase on diesel and 30 centavos on kerosene effective tomorrow by 6 o'clock a.m. amid the looming US-Iran tension. However, the price of gasoline will decrease by 10 centavos per liter. The Energy Department has yet to determine if the oil price hike will continue on the following weeks. The DOE is closely monitoring the situation in the world market but assures this will not be a reason for oil companies to take advantage of fuel prices.
Walang karapatan basta si oil company na mag-adjust kung wala talagang trigger kasi alam ng DOE yun.
Meanwhile, the DOE has reported that oil companies are yet to implement oil price hike due to additional excise tax as part of the third tranche of the train law. The oil companies are required to submit their notarized inventory report ending December 31, 2019. Such report must be submitted by January 8, 2020. The oil firms are also obliged to place a tarpaulin at their gasoline stations once they are set to implement an oil price hike due to additional excise tax. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue, Taguig City.
Welcome back to Y News. We pick up to where Angelo Castro III left off. I am Alex Baltazar, and here are the headlines. President Rodrigo Duterte has signed into law the 4.1 trillion national budget for the year 2020. The Department of Health orders a strict monitoring of incoming travelers from China amid reports of an allegedly mysterious viral disease. The Department of the Interior and Local Government seeks the suspension of 10 mayors for their failed clearing operation performance. The family of Jeneline Villavende, the supposedly slain overseas Filipino worker in Kuwait, cries for justice. And President Rodrigo Duterte orders the armed forces of the Philippines to prepare their assets for possible evacuation of more than 7,000 Filipinos in Iran and Iraq. Good evening. There have been reports of a mysterious disease in China that affected 44 people. Strict measures are being implemented on passengers coming from China arriving at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. Philippine health authorities say Filipinos must not be complacent about the disease described as a viral pneumonia of unknown origin. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
The Health Department orders the Bureau of Quarantine to closely monitor the arrival of the travelers or passengers from China in the Philippines. Thermal scanners will be used on travelers not only from China but also from neighboring Asian countries.
Pagbaba natin ng aeroplano, dadaan tayo syempre dun sa quarantine area kung saan yung scanner, no, na makikita natin at may thermal scan tayo doon to check for patients with fever. At kung may makikita rin nila yung mga pasyente kung may signs and symptoms ka ng mga ubo-sipon.
If the passenger's temperature exceeds the normal human body temperature of 36.5 Celsius, the passenger will be sent to the quarantine office at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport where he will undergo physical examination.
May doctors tayo that will do a physical examination to see and malaman, i-assess natin kung i-warranted na sila ay i-quarantine muna natin or i-admit sa ating mga ospital na merong isolation facilities.
Passengers need to fill out a checklist in which the country of origin, plane seat number, and their personal information are indicated. Based on the Department of Tourism's record, almost 150,000 Chinese passengers traveled to the Philippines every month last year. Until now, the virus which infected 44 individuals in China is not yet identified. Based on a report received by the Department of Health, it is considered as a mysterious disease because it has symptoms like fever, cough, cold, and difficulty in breathing. The DOH says anyone seen with those symptoms must immediately seek medical attention.
Medyo nahirapan huminga, tas sa x-ray may finding sila ng pneumonia. Hindi pa tayo clear kung ano ang virus na nagkakos nitong sakit na to at hindi natin pa masyado siyang naiintindihan na sakit. Kaya tayo talagang nagdodoble ingat lang tayo, no, habang hindi pa siya masyadong very well identified.
The DOH explains it remains as a mysterious disease because it appeared in a laboratory test in China, that the virus is not like any other flu virus, SARS, or pneumonia.
Na itong mga pasyente nila sa China, tinesting sila, negative sila doon sa mga virus na regular flu, yung mga lagi madalas na umiikot sa atin na flu, negative din naman sila for yung bird flu at saka for SARS. So mukhang it's something new na hindi pa natin talaga completely natutukoy as of now.
Health Undersecretary Eric Domingo adds there are no human-to-human transmission recorded yet, but the public should not be at ease and lax about this situation. Of the 44 affected individuals, 11 have severe pneumonia. They are being treated and managed in an isolation facility in China.
Well, possibly airborne siya kasi para kumagat siya ng ganung kabilis, no? Galing sa isang lugar. Ibig sabihin, madali siyang matransmit doon sa lugar na yon. Pero so far, wala pa tayong nakikita ng pasyente na nagkasakit tas nakapanghawa siya ng ibang tao.
Health and isolation facilities in the Philippines are on alert for possible entrance of the disease similar to a viral pneumonia of unknown origin.
So meron tayong Bureau of Quarantine, yung ating Epidemiology Bureau. May mga hospitals tayo na infectious disease specialty hospitals katulad ng RITM at San Lazaro kung saan meron tayong isolation rooms na maaari silang dalhin kung magkaroon ng mga pasyente. Ganon din sa mga regional hospitals natin.
According to the DOH, as long as the disease is not yet identified, the public must be vigilant and extra cautious, especially that the transmission is fast in a particular public market in Wuhan, China. Everyone is advised to exercise regular hand washing, cover the mouth and nose when coughing and when experiencing colds. This is to avoid transmitting any virus to others. Seek immediate medical consultation when fever lasts for 3 to 5 days. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
A mysterious viral pneumonia that has infected dozens in central China is not severe acute respiratory syndrome or SARS. Health chiefs have also discounted bird flu and Middle East respiratory syndrome and said investigations were continuing. A total of 59 cases have been reported in the city of Wuhan, 7 of which are considered critical. The outbreak prompted Singapore and Hong Kong to bring in screening processes for travelers from the city. The Department of the Interior and Local Government seeks the suspension of 10 mayors in different parts of the country. The DILG reminds local government units there is a law that mayors and even barangay captains must do their jobs. Ray Palayo explains why.
10 mayors are facing complaints of gross neglect of duty and grave misconduct at the Office of the Ombudsman for not complying with the clearing operations project of the Department of the Interior and Local Government. Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya said this is initial among the 97 local government units who have failed in the DILG's ratings.
At sana man na mag-suspend ka agad itong 10 mayor na ito.
The 10 local chief executives Yusek Malaya is referring to are the mayors of Baco Oriental Mindoro, Pili Camarines Sur, Ginatilan Cebu, Pagsanhan Samar, Aurora and Lapuyan, Zamboanga del Sur, Sagay and Ginsiliban Camiguin, Mantikao Misamis Oriental, and Caragain Davao Oriental.
Sa amin kasi is more of a message. No, mensahe sa lahat ng LGU na may batas na kailangan gawin nyo yung trabaho nyo.
A new set of guidelines for the clearing operations will be announced next week. Undersecretary Malaya says the 75-day clearing operations will include inner roads of barangays. The DILG will also announce barangay chiefs that will be filed with cases. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Malacanang will defer to the military's recommendation on a possible ceasefire extension. Tomorrow, Tuesday at 11:59 p.m., the unilateral ceasefire declaration of the government and of the Communist Party of the Philippines, National Democratic Front, New People's Army, or CPP-NDF-NPA will end. However, CPP founder Jose Maria Sison said the ceasefire may extend if the government will release political prisoners for humanitarian considerations, including the sick and the elderly.
Is that possible? We will defer that to the recommendation of the military.
The family of Jeneline Villavende cries for justice after the demise of their loved one in the hands of her employers. They call on President Rodrigo Duterte to assure that justice is served. Janice Anyenta tells us why.
Napakabait na bata yun, ma'am. Wala kang narinig sa kanya na kahit anong salita na masakit, wala rin, ma'am.
Jeneline Villavende's family mourns the loss of a kind daughter. Jeneline was the Filipino worker allegedly killed by her Kuwaiti employers. According to Nelly Pardinal, Jeneline's stepmother, her daughter was driven to work abroad due to their family's lack of financial resources. Nelly recounts the OFW had nothing else in mind but to fulfill the dreams of her family members.
Bago sa umalis sa abroad, ma'am, na pangarap niya, ma'am, gusto niya gid yung bahay namin. Na mapatayo daw siya ng bahay kasi sira na yun. Tapos gusto na niya yung lupa namin na nakaprenda. Ilukat niya daw. Tapos yung kapatid niyang bunso na tulungan niya daw mag-aral, ma'am, hanggang kolehiyo. Yun ang pangarap niya, ma'am.
It was in July 2019 when Jeneline decided to work as a domestic helper in the Gulf state. Her father tried to stop her, but she still pursued to work in the Middle East.
Tay maabroad ko tay. Maabroad ko kun kuti ga delikado. Una tay pa suti-suti mo tay. Kun masin di ilatin mo tay konsulti mo tin. Kun ko ga ambalo si mo. Kung suling adlaw ga nga anong tabusin mo ga, di mo basulon. Kay kanasilingan siya ga nga maski isa kataga ga. Way ako pag sugo nimo, mabrod ko. Way ko pag sugo sa bata ko mabrod.
The Villavendes could rarely speak with Jeneline over the phone. Their last conversation was in October last year. Nelly says that Jeneline didn't mention the abuses she had been suffering from her employers. In November, Jeneline did not contact her family, so the Villavendes tried to call her bosses instead.
Yung employer niya, ma'am, doon ako tumatawag sa number ng employer niya. Sinasagot niya man ako. Tapos, sinabihan ko nga gusto ko magkausap kay Jeneline. Sabi niya, busy daw sa work.
The family got worried, so they tried contacting Jeneline's employer one more time. Yet again, they failed to speak with Jeneline.
December 13, last na yun, ma'am. Sabi niya, in Arabic, ma'am, hindi ko intindihan. Sabi ko, translate mo ng English para magkausap tayo. Yun, sabi niya, Roslyn, tawag niya doon kay Jeneline. Na Roslyn, back to the Philippines, sabi niya sa akin. Na sabi ko, why ma'am? Na ano ang reason nga back to the Philippines si Jeneline? Sabi niya, early in the morning, wake up 10 o'clock, sabi niya. No work, no cook na. Ano na sabi niya? Siguro ma'am, na-stress siguro si Jeneline, ma'am ba? Kay third floor man yung bahay ng amo niya, siya lang isa nagtatrabaho.
On December 30, the couple received the sad news from the Department of Foreign Affairs that Jeneline died in the jurisdiction of her employers.
Napanawagan ko lang sa gobyerno po, Pangulong Duterte na tulungan gid si Jeneline, hustisya gid ma'am. Hustisya gid na matulungan niya si Jeneline, ma'am. Amo lang na ang masabi ko kay Pangulong Duterte, hustisya lang ma'am para kay Jeneline.
The Department of Foreign Affairs assures the Philippine government has chosen an excellent Kuwaiti lawyer to handle Jeneline's case. The investigation into the OFW's case is underway. The primary suspects in the crime are Jeneline's employers. A Kuwaiti court will formally start the hearing of the case after the week-long investigation is completed. Janice Enhente, UNTV, News and Rescue, Nurala, South Cotabato.
It is possible the Kuwaiti government would release the result of its investigation into the supposed slaying of Jeneline Villavende in Kuwait. The Philippine government hopes the decision will bring justice for the Filipino workers' demise. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
The Philippine government expects the release of the result of the Kuwaiti government's investigation into the death of Jeneline Villavende in 6 to 7 days. According to Overseas Workers Welfare Administration or OWA Administrator Hans Leo Kakdak, the Philippine government is also waiting for the Kuwaiti government's decision.
Sabi ng Kuwaiti ambassador, currently there are investigations ongoing. The employer couple are detained, are in prison. So, pending investigation, they will remain in prison until, of course, ang expectation natin after 6 to 7 days, they will be formally charged in a court, Kuwaiti court. After which, paglilitis na or a trial will ensue.
According to OWA, it is not yet confirmed whether Villavende's male employer is a policeman, but the Kuwaiti ambassador to the Philippines, Al Twake, has assured the Filipino workers' employers will be charged once proved of committing the crime.
But he is an official of the Interior Ministry at kasama dun sa Interior Ministry yung kapulisan.
Meanwhile, the governing board of the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration or POEA is currently investigating Villavende's local recruitment agency. It has been reported the said agency did not take any action on Villavende's complaints against her employers for not giving her salary. The agency may face suspension or cancellation of their license once their negligence on Villavende's complaints are proved. Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
President Rodrigo Duterte has signed the 4.1 trillion peso national budget for 2020. Among the departments with the highest budget are the Education, Defense, and Health departments. The president wants to ensure that every peso in the budget is spent for the benefit of Filipino taxpayers. Rosalie Cos reports.
After the thorough review of the 2020 General Appropriations Bill, President Rodrigo Duterte signs the national budget for this year, amounting to 4.1 trillion pesos. The ceremonial signing was held in Malacanang this afternoon, witnessed by officials from the two chambers of Congress. The 4.1 trillion peso national budget is the country's largest to date, which is equivalent to 19.5% of the projected domestic product. It is also 12% higher than the 3.662 trillion peso budget in 2019. The top 10 departments with the highest amount of budget are the Department of Education with 692.6 billion pesos budget this year, the Department of Public Works and Highways with 581.7 billion pesos, the Department of the Interior and Local Government with 241.6 billion pesos, Department of Social Welfare and Development with 200.5 billion pesos, the Department of National Defense with 192.1 billion pesos. The Department of Health is the sixth department with biggest amount. Then the Department of Transportation, Agriculture, Judiciary, and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. This means the social services sector, which includes programs in education, health, and social protection, accounts for the largest bulk of the budget this year. Next is the economic services or for the infrastructure development. Meanwhile, Budget Secretary Wendell Avisado has confirmed that President Duterte has not vetoed any line items in the 2020 national budget.
Together, let us ensure that every peso in the budget will never be used to support the selfish greed of the few, but spent exclusively for the benefit and the service of the Filipino taxpayers.
Rosa Licoz, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
And to complete the most significant news for this day, Y News continues. Here are the top stories. The Supreme Court has upheld its dismissal of the petition seeking to allow same-sex marriage in the country. In a resolution dated December 10, 2019, but was released only today by the SC Public Information Office, the court denied with finality the petitioner's motion for reconsideration, saying no substantial arguments were presented to warrant a reversal of their ruling. In its decision last December, the Supreme Court unanimously voted to dismiss the petition, citing lack of legal standing on the part of the petitioner and violation of the hierarchy of courts, among others. The petition was filed by attorney Jesus Falsis, an openly gay lawyer, and was backed by an LGBT group. Meanwhile, President Rodrigo Duterte orders the armed forces of the Philippines to prepare their assets for a possible evacuation of over 7,000 in Iraq and Iran. Dante Amento tells us why.
President Rodrigo Duterte called a meeting with Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana and officials of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine National Police yesterday to discuss the possible effects of the ongoing tensions between the U.S. and Iran. AFP Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Filimon Santos Jr. says they are monitoring local terrorist groups who might support the Iranian militia and the possible retaliatory act by Iran against countries allied with the U.S. like the Philippines.
We are looking at the possible targets ng Iranian on other countries and to our country. Ano ang mga probable na pwede nilang gawin just to retaliate.
The PNP, for their part, intensified their intelligence monitoring.
Siyempre merong sympathetic either by race or by ideology. No? So the PNP is profiling possible threats, possible groups who may take advantage or who might sympathize. So our intelligence monitoring will be continuous up until medyo luminaw na yung problema doon sa Middle East.
President Rodrigo Duterte is worried about the situation of about 1,300 Filipinos in Iran and 6,000 in Iraq. The chief executive has ordered the AFP to prepare their assets for possible evacuation of those Filipinos. According to AFP Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Filimon Santos Jr., their available assets include the Philippine Air Force C-130 and the new sea assets of the Philippine Navy.
The indicators will be determined by pag-uusapan namin ng national government. Ang go signal is from them, especially with the DFA, with all the inputs.
Dan Tiamento, UNTV News and Rescue, Camp Aguinaldo.
The Philippine government may implement a forced repatriation of overseas Filipino workers if tension escalates in the Middle East. This is the response of presidential spokesperson and chief presidential legal counsel Secretary Salvador Panelo when asked if the government would implement such measures if some Filipinos still prefer to stay in the Middle East. This comes as tension between the U.S. and Iran escalates after Iran's two top military officials were killed in a U.S. airstrike in Iraq. President Rodrigo Duterte has earlier directed the country's security officials to prepare all military, aerial, and naval assets if mass repatriation of overseas Filipino workers becomes necessary, particularly in Iran and Iraq.
Kung nanganganib ang kanilang buhay, siyempre gagawin ang lahat ng pamahalaan upang mailigtas sila sa kapahamakan.
And for the news abroad, here's RL Kamiya reporting live from Takatsuka, Japan. RL, good evening.
Good evening, William. And here are the top stories from around the globe. The Iranian government announced that it will abandon the nuclear deal signed with several world powers in 2015, although it will continue cooperating with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Kath Dumaraos will tell us why.
Iran has declared that it would no longer abide by any of the restrictions imposed by the 2015 nuclear deal. In a statement, it said it would no longer observe limitations on its capacity for enrichment, the level of enrichment, the stock of enriched material, or research and development. The announcement followed a meeting of the Iranian cabinet in Tehran. Tensions have been high over the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani by the U.S. in Baghdad. Hundreds of thousands turned out in Iran on Sunday to give Soleimani a hero's welcome ahead of his funeral on Tuesday. Earlier, Iraqi MPs had passed a non-binding resolution calling for foreign troops to leave the country after the general's killing in a drone strike at Baghdad airport on Friday. About 5,000 U.S. soldiers are in Iraq as part of the international coalition against the Islamic State group. The coalition paused operations against IS in Iraq just before Sunday's vote. President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened that the U.S. will strike back at Iran in the event of retaliation for Soleimani's death and said it could do so perhaps in a disproportionate manner. Kat Numaraos, UNTV News and Rescue.
Iran has placed a huge bounty on the American president's head following the death of General Qasem Soleimani. A video posted on social media shows huge crowds marching on protest following Soleimani's death, before a male voice can be heard placing a bounty on the U.S. president's head. Earlier on Sunday, Iranian Labor News Agency claimed Iranian MP Abolfazl Abu Torabi warned the country could respond to the general's death on U.S. soil. Rain is falling in Australia and temperatures have dropped, but officials warn that fires ravaging the country will take off again. Nina Bascon details why.
Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has warned that the devastating bushfires raging in the country might go on for months. At least 24 people have died since the fires began in September 2019. Air quality in the capital Canberra was this weekend rated the worst in the world. Morrison announced the creation of a recovery agency to help those who have lost homes and businesses in the fires. He has faced fierce criticisms over the speed of his response to the crisis. The weekend saw some of the worst days of the crisis so far, with hundreds more properties destroyed. Rural towns and major cities saw red skies, falling ash and smoke that clogged the air. Conditions eased in Victoria and New South Wales on Sunday after temperatures and wind speeds dropped and some light rain fell, but authorities warned that the danger was far from over. Prime Minister Morrison on Saturday announced the largest military call-up in the country's recent history, mobilizing up to 3,000 reservists to assist exhausted volunteer firefighters. Morrison also announced a $2 billion Australian National Bushfire Recovery Fund to support the rebuilding of Australia after a horror fire season. The fires have razed almost 6 million hectares of land, equivalent to twice the area of Belgium, 4.2 million of which belong to New South Wales, and more than 1 million to the adjacent state of Victoria. Nina Bascon, UNTV News and Rescue, Australia.
Venezuela's main opposition party has denounced what it called a coup after its leader Juan Guaido was replaced as head of parliament. Beverly Sison explains why.
Venezuela's opposition leader Juan Guaido has been violently blocked from presiding over a special session of Congress in what opposition officials condemned as a hijacking of the country's last democratic institution.
Juro ante Dios, ante el pueblo de Venezuela, hacer cumplir.
Hours later, however, a majority of Congress members held an emergency meeting at an opposition newspaper office and voted to re-elect Guaido as their leader. But they were pushed back by National Guardsmen wielding heavy riot shields. As scuffles broke out, the U.S.-backed Guaido tried to maintain an iron fence surrounding the legislature, only to be repelled again. Inside, the situation was similarly rowdy, as a rival slate headed by lawmaker Luis Para were sworn in as legislative leaders, while opposition lawmakers were out of the chamber. Opposition leaders immediately denounced the session as a show carried out by a group of traitors in cahoots with President Nicolas Maduro. A year ago, Guaido asserted at a street demonstration that a position as legislative leader made him Venezuela's interim president in place of the usurper Maduro, whose 2018 reflection has been rejected as invalid by legislature, as well as by the U.S., European Union, and several Latin American governments. Key opposition figures were barred from running in that election. There was no indication of weakening support among the more than 50 governments that recognize Guaido as Venezuela's rightful leader. The European Union said it would continue to recognize Guaido. Brazil's government called the initial session an affront to democracy, and the top-ranking U.S. diplomat in Latin America called Sunday's events in the chamber a farce. Beverly Sison, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the stories from around the globe. Back to you, William.
Thank you, R.L. Kamiya, reporting live from Takatsuka, Japan. The Department of Agriculture Food Masters will head for another game with eyes on a quarterfinal slot in the UNTV Cup Season 8. The DENR Food Masters, on the other hand, earns its ticket to the semifinals of the League of Public Servants. Bernard Dadis tells us why.
Former professional basketball player Emerson Oreta, together with Sherwin Silva, with double-double performance, led the Agriculture Food Masters to a winner-take-all victory against Malacanang PSC Camao yesterday in Paco Arena in Manila City. The game ended with 78-68 on the scoreboard. Oreta with 26 points and Silva with 17 points and 11 rebounds were hailed as the best players of the game.
Game plan si Coach Ronnie, we need to play hard sa third quarter pa rin. Nandun pa rin yung enjoyment namin, but then again, we need to follow our system and to play as a team. Yun ang nawawala sa amin pag dumidikit yung kalaban, nagkakanya-kanya kami.
The Camao team dominated the first 3 quarters. But the Food Masters turned the table through effective defense after the first 2 minutes of the last quarter.
Nung nilamangan kami ng 11 points, kailangan lang nila trabahuin. Kasi sabi ko, kahit ano ituro ko, pagka medyo hesitant sila, nahihirapan talaga kami.
Meanwhile, rookie team DENR Warriors joins AFP Cavaliers in waiting for semi-final round after eliminating PhilHealth Plus in a neck-and-neck battle 110-98. Coming from a disappointing loss last year, the DENR team bounced back with Ed Rivera and Melvin Bangal leading their campaign. Rivera posted 25 points and Bangal contributed 18 points and 9 assists.
So, nagpapasalamat lang kami sa suporta ng management sa amin, and then yung commitment na rin ng mga players, yung sakripisyo nila, kahit yung pamilya nila gustong-gusto na umuwi sila, kaso kailangan namin mag-practice, so nandun sila sa amin.
Paul Erwin Pareño also contributed 20 points and Desiderio Aizon 14 points and 12 rebounds. PhilHealth Plus was led by Jonathan Aldabe with 36 points and 10 boards, Kenneth Emata with 23 points, and Ian Crismaso with 19 points. Camao's chance for a quarter-final slot depends on the result of Judiciary PITC battle on January 12. Bernard Dadis, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
The bushfires in Australia have been making headlines since last year. Lives have been lost not only of humans but also of animals, which number over 500 million. Many individuals and groups have been making efforts to save affected wildlife. Nina Armilio reports.
The bushfires in Australia, which began in September last year, are continuing until now. Human death toll has risen to over 20. Houses damaged and burned. Calls for prayers and help to save the wildlife in the country have been circulating online. Bear is a koala detection dog. He has been deployed to detect if there are koalas still around and have survived the fire. This is the time when humans show compassion towards animals in order to save them from the raging fires, injuries, hunger, and thirst. This cyclist, who met a koala on his route, gave the animal a drink to quench its thirst. A fireman has found the survivor and gave the furry one a drink. It seems that 2 bottles of water did not suffice to satisfy its need for water. This baby koala dropped a visit to Damon Campbell Davis, who was filling a water tank of truck used to put out the fires. Damon named the cute animal Little Lars. Many groups have also been working to save the various species of animals, like kangaroos, feather-tailed glider, brush-tailed possum, and others affected by the calamity. One of them is the Wires Wildlife Rescue, who was helped by Dr. Hunter and Dr. Ubel of Stewart Street's Vets. The NSW Rural Fires Volunteer also saved these animals from danger. The Taronga Wildlife Hospital and Science for Wildlife are also working together to shelter several koalas in the Blue Mountains World Heritage Area. 7-year-old Maya Morris, according to Beverly Murray, though sad that she can't help save the wildlife, she just drew what she is feeling. They may be just animals, but they also know how to show gratitude to humans that show compassion to them. Nina Armilio, UNTV News and Rescue.
And those are the reasons behind the news this January 6, 2020. On behalf of Alex Baltazar and Angelo Castro III, I am William Theo, and before we close, we will recap with today's significant sound bites. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Good evening.
Failure na siya. Dahil yung kampanya laban sa illegal na droga, maraming aspeto ito. At nakikita natin, gaya ng sinabi ko sa report, na masyado lang natutukan yung street level enforcement.
Palagay ko yung failure, yung pag-upo niya.
Walang vendor sa buong Quiapo. 0. At lahat ng dadaanan ng Traslacion. Walang uri ng obstruction.
Sana man na mag-suspend ka agad itong 10 mayor na ito. Ito mga pasyente nila sa China, tinesting sila, negative sila doon sa mga virus na regular flu, yung mga laging madalas na umiikot sa atin na flu. Negative din naman sila for yung bird flu at saka for SARS. So mukhang it's something new na hindi pa natin talaga completely natutukoy as of now.
Together, let us ensure that every peso in the budget will never be used to support the selfish greed of the few, but spent exclusively for the benefit and the service of the Filipino taxpayers.